Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Simply Satisfied. I am your host, Greg, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Ken Kunken, who he has been through some traumatic experiences in his life. He has gone through a lot of different things. However, his main message today, and I'm going to let him share most of it, his main message today is that you can get back up from anything that you suffer from. And we're just going to dive on in because I feel like he can tell you way more about himself than I can. So welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you, Greg.
I'm happy to have you here. I've been waiting for this one because I listened to your book and I love your story.
Thank you.
It's a very, I won't say, I love the story, but it's very, it's a traumatic thing that you went through, right?
Sure was, and sure is.
It sure
Continue.
is. Exactly. Continue to go through. So why don't we start from the beginning? If actually, I'm going to let you start. Where would your beginning start?
Okay, well, I think the best place to start, Greg, would be in 1970. At that time, I was 20 years old. I was early in my junior year at Cornell University, where I was studying industrial engineering. And I was playing on Cornell's lightweight football team. And in a game against Columbia University, I ran downfield on a kickoff. I tackled the ball carrier, and when I made impact, I broke my neck and severely damaged my spinal cord. As a result, I'm almost totally paralyzed. I'm a quadriplegic. I have a little bit of movement in my left arm, but nothing in my fingers or my wrist. And on the right side of my body, I could just shrug my shoulder a bit. So I spent the next 9 months and 20 days in various hospitals and rehabilitation centers.
Wow. But you made the tackle.
I sure did.
I mean, that's pretty big. So you spent 9 months and 20 days in rehabilitation centers and hospitals. What was that like?
It was brutal. I mean, for one, it was obviously terribly depressing, having suddenly lost all movement in my body, as well as just about all sensation over my body. I have no sensation a few inches below my shoulders and up. And as a result, now I'm quite a bit dependent on everybody around me. And when I was first injured, I didn't know much about spinal cord injuries at all. So it was all quite a bit of a learning process that took place over a lengthy period of time.
Yeah. Now you mentioned it being a little depressing, which I can only understand or only imagine, right? That's probably something that I may never fully understand, but throughout that process, what kept you going?
Oh, it was definitely my family and friends. I mean, I was so fortunate to have a very supportive family who stood by me every step of the way. And they basically assured me they would act as my arms and legs to make sure I could still do everything I wanted to do in my life. And thanks to them and thanks to the friends that I've had, I've been able to pretty much do everything I have wanted to do.
Wow. That's amazing. And so that support system got you through a lot of those times, right? And helped you get to do the things you wanted to do in your life. Obviously, plans probably changed when all this happened, right?
Oh, they sure did. I mean, as I indicated, I was studying industrial engineering at the time. And once I lost virtually all movement, industrial engineering just certainly didn't seem like a viable field. I mean, this was well before the age of laptop computers. And I might add that very few people had any type of positive impressions about what I might be able to do with my life. In fact, it seemed the medical profession thought that the best I may ever be able to do now would be to someday sell magazine subscriptions over the telephone. And I was devastated when I saw that. When I saw that, they were reluctant to answer any of my questions. And I saw that in a brochure that the rehab agency had published, that for somebody in my condition, it seemed like the only thing they suggested I might be able to do would be to someday sell magazine subscriptions over the telephone.
Really? That's insane. So there wasn't a lot of optimism around your situation.
There was virtually none. And at the time, there was very little I could do. I mean, even with some braces and splints, maybe I could type a little bit, although very slowly, and I'd get tired very fast. But other than that, and being able to operate an electric wheelchair, there was very little I could do for myself.
Yeah. And so when did you make, you graduated, right? In industrial engineering?
Right? Yeah, I was encouraged to go back to college by a vocational counselor that I had at the Rusk Institute, which was the rehab facility I was at. Her name was Joyce Mesh, and she encouraged me to go back to school and complete my education. My family encouraged me to do that as well. So I returned to Cornell. In fact, I did that just 9 days after I was finally discharged from the hospital. And I resumed my studies in industrial engineering. And I was very fortunate that with a lot of help, I completed my junior and senior year in college during those next 2 years. And I became the first quadriplegic to ever graduate from Cornell University.
Wow. It's amazing. And then you decided to shift gears.
Right. I mean, it was really clear that industrial engineering would not be viable for me. There was so little I could do physically to try and function in that area. And I fortunately had taken some electives in psychology while I was in school. And based on the recommendation of a psychology professor by the name of Dr. James Moss, I decided to pursue a career in psychology and to become a counselor. So, based on his suggestions, I continued my education at Cornell, where I earned a Master of Arts degree, majoring in counseling and student personnel administration. And then to increase my counseling credentials, I went to Columbia University, where I earned my second master's degree. This one was a Master's of Education degree, where I majored in psychological counseling and rehabilitation.
Wow. Okay, so lots of education.
It sure was, but then the problems really started because when I started looking for a job in the rehabilitation counseling field, no one would hire me. I looked for a job for a year and sent out more than 200 resumes. This was now in the mid 1970s, and it seemed everyone felt I was just too disabled to work. I was even turned down when I offered to volunteer my services, Greg. And think about this. I had 2 degrees from Cornell, excuse me, one from Columbia, three prestigious Ivy League degrees, two master's degrees, and I couldn't even give my services away until I found one company willing to give me the chance to show what I could do. And that organization was Abilities Incorporated, which was part of what was then called the Human Resources Center and is now called the Viscardi Center. They're located on Long Island in New York, and they hired me to work as a vocational rehabilitation counselor, counseling other individuals who had severe physical disabilities.
Yeah. Wow. So nobody would hire you. I mean, 3 degrees from prestigious schools. I mean, top of the top schools. Nobody would hire you, and you finally got in with this one organization.
Right, which I just happened to be at last night visiting. And as it turned out, with respect to all the people I was counseling there, I was the one that was the most severely disabled. But I was so fortunate. They gave me this opportunity, and I owe them so much. And I absolutely loved working there as a voc rehab counselor.
Wow. That's awesome. You still work with them today?
Well, actually, now I'm on their board of directors.
Oh,
So I'm thrilled that when I finally decided to leave the job, they remembered me 30 years after I left. The president of Abilities Inc. called me on the telephone and asked me to be a member of their board of directors, which I very proudly and quickly accepted.
yeah. Now you left that job and you went to you worked as a DA, right?
Right. I left that job to go to law school.
There you
What
go.
happened when I was working as a rehab counselor, I was often asked to speak before groups and organizations concerning affirmative action and non discrimination with respect to people with disabilities. And I would often be asked questions after my talks. And while I would do my best to answer those questions, I was always careful to caution the questioners they should really consult with a lawyer about their concerns. And I guess it didn't take long before I decided to go to law school and become that lawyer.
Yeah.
So I left the job, went to law school, and I have an older brother by the name of Steve, who's 2 years older than me, and he's a lawyer. And he was working as a defense attorney at the time. And he encouraged me to do an internship at the Nassau County District Attorney's Office, which I did. I absolutely loved it. And I applied for a full time job with them during my third year of law school. I was so fortunate to be hired, and I worked there for more than 40 years.
Wow. And just astonishing career. So you went back to school, got probably, another big degree, right? Became,
Right.
started working in DA's office and had this whole career, right? And then you turned it into a book. When did you write your book, by the way?
Actually, I started writing my book while I was still in the rehab facility, 6 months after I was injured.
Wow.
A friend of my Aunt Lorraine's by the name of Albert Meglin came to the rehab facility and thought that by writing a book, for one, it would help me deal with some of the depression I was going through, but also to inform people a little bit more about what spinal cord injuries were all about and what the rehab process was like. Now, keep in mind, Greg, this was about 25 years before Christopher Reeve had his spinal cord injury. So there wasn't much publicity about spinal cord injuries when I was hurt, and very few people knew much about it. So this man encouraged me to write a book, and quite frankly, it took me close to 50 years to write it. I would start and stop when he was able to come to the rehab facility. And then when I went back to school, I would start again on my vacations. And eventually, uh, I tried even typing by myself to see if I could do some of it, which was a really slow process.
Yeah.
But it took quite a while. And in fact, almost 50 years later, I was finally able to complete it. And Greg, if I might just tell you and your listeners how I came about the title.
Yeah.
Uh, while I was still a patient in a rehab facility, I was asked to testify before a United States Senate Health Subcommittee chaired by Senator Edward Kennedy. And 8 days after my testimony, Senator Kennedy sent me a glass paperweight in the mail that had an inscription on it that the senator said his late brother Robert Kennedy liked very much. And the inscription read, "Some men see things as they are and say why. I dream of things that never were and say why not." And that's where I got the title of my book, I Dream of Things That Never Were, the Ken Kunken story.
I love it. I was gonna ask how you came up with the title. That's really good.
Thank you.
Do you still have that?
I sure do. In fact, the book is on the shelf right behind me now. And it was published in October of 2023. It's also out in a Kindle version. And as you indicated, there's an audio version that I narrated myself.
Yeah. And I listened to it. I was like, wow, this guy has an amazing story. And so, what would be, and I know we probably can't cover your whole story in this whole show. That'd be multiple episodes. But what do you think the biggest message of your story is?
Well, actually, I think there are a few, Greg. Firstly, one is to never give up. To two, to do your best to face challenges head on and to fight to overcome adversity. Three, help to accept help when it's offered, right? Not to be so defensive or egotistical that you feel like you don't need any help. There are times when everybody needs a little bit of help. And I think what helped me is when I learned it's easier for people to help me when I tried to maintain a positive attitude and was more accepting of one situation I was in and the help people were offering. And I think a combination of all of those has made a big difference And then when I was finally able to work at Abilities Inc. and be able to be in a position where I could help others made an enormous difference in my life. Because being in a position where you could help others really changes how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, of course. Now, obviously the physical changes you went through shifted your life immensely, right? Can you pinpoint when you started to change your perspective on it? Because I know you said that at the beginning it was very depressive or depressing. Can you
It sure
pick?
was. And I still have days where it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But you know what? Starting to work and earn a salary at the Human Resource Center, which again is now called the Viscardi Center, named after its founder, Dr. Henry Viscardi Jr., really, really changed my life because it really was a revelation that despite my condition, I was still in a position where I could help others. And seeing that and being able to do that, I think enormously changed my life.
Yeah. How do you deal with those days where it's still struggle?
Well, there are a number of different ways, but if I could just jump ahead in our story, I was eventually able to get married to the woman of my dreams. Her name is Anna. She's actually just sitting off screen to my right today. And when Anna and I decided to get married, and by the way, by then I was already in my 50s, Anna told me that she'd like to have my baby, which really seemed impossible. I had been paralyzed more than 30 years by then. So we got married in 1953, and we searched various options and decided to pursue in vitro fertilization. And through the miracle of science, Anna became pregnant. And in 2005, I was present in the delivery room when
Wow.
Anna gave birth to triplets. So we have three beautiful sons, Joey, Jimmy, and Timmy. And whenever I'm having a bad day, all I need to do is to look at my three sons, to look at my wife, Anna, and I snap right out of it.
Yeah. Triplets, huh?
Triplet boys, they just completed their sophomore year in three separate colleges in upstate New York.
Wow. What's it like to have triplets?
It's the greatest thing in the world. I can't imagine anything that could be better than that. I have three absolutely wonderful sons that I've enjoyed helping in any way that I can. While I can't do much physically with them, I can hopefully teach them the proper values and develop the right character and enjoy every accomplishment that they're now obtaining.
Yeah. Amazing. And so in your story, right, you get married, Anna gets pregnant. Okay. What are some of the things, and obviously you're teaching them along the way, you're teaching your triplet boys. What are some of the things from your story that you've taught them along the way?
Well, I've taught them, for one, to help others. And every time they have an opportunity now, they try and help others in a lot of different ways through volunteer work. I've also tried to help them face challenges head on. And in addition, I've tried to teach them the importance of family. Family has made an enormous difference in my life. I wanted to make sure they appreciate not just their immediate family, but their extended family, which includes aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, grandparents, cousins. And I'm so fortunate that they have learned these lessons well, and they've stayed very close with each other despite the fact that they are separated by three different colleges. They remain very close. They're best friends. They FaceTime when they're away. They visited each other in school and gone to classes with each other. And they just bring me so much pleasure and joy every time I see or think about them.
Yeah. Amazing. Now you also, if I remember correctly, you also have spoken about your story a lot.
Right. I actually started doing motivational speaking. People were encouraging me to do that. And for years ago, and initially I was resisting, I kept saying I really didn't think I had done much, despite the fact that I had gone back to school, obtained a few degrees, and was even working as an assistant DA. But once my boys were born, I remember they were all very healthy and terrific kids and very fine athletes. But I remember visiting them when they were in the NICU because triplets are always born prematurely. And I remember sitting by their incubators, their three incubators, and suddenly it just hit me like, wow, this is big. This is a story that needs to be told. So I started doing motivational speaking. I've probably given about 40 motivational talks now. In fact, I gave one just a couple of weeks ago in upstate Saratoga Springs, New York, at a conference encouraging people to hire people with disabilities. And I spoke before about 200 people in that conference.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess that answers my next question: is does it change every time you speak? Does your story change? Does the speech you give change?
It does. It does, based on what's going on in the world and what's happening in my life and with my family. But one of the things that I try and talk about now is the importance and the positive benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion. For some reason, some people today seem to have a negative impression of DEI, and I don't think they fully appreciate the effect that hiring somebody who's a little different than you, maybe with some different abilities, can have a positive effect on everybody around that person who comes in contact with them. And that applies to going to school with people who are different than you. I mean, America is the great melting pot of the world where we welcome people from diverse backgrounds and situations. And I want to encourage people to have a positive impression of all the benefits DEI brings, both in the school setting, as well as in the workplace, as well as on the playground. And I think it makes a big difference in so many people's lives. And I might add, Greg, that, in working in the DA's office, when you leave the job, they have you go through what's called an exit interview where you talk about what are some of the things you like best about the job and what are some of the things you thought could be improved. And I must say, I was told on a number of occasions when some of my fellow ADAs, assistant district attorneys, were leaving the job, they indicated that one of the best parts of their job was meeting, getting to know, and working with me. And I'm not saying that to boast or brag. I'm saying that because most people, unless they have a close relative with a disability, rarely come in contact on a daily basis with somebody with a disability. And for many of them, it was a very positive revelation that, working with somebody with a disability, for one, did not mean additional work to them, for them, but it helped motivate and inspire them to do a better job at their own type of duties and responsibilities with respect to the work. And I think it helps so many people just having contact with people who may be a little bit different than you are. And that's part of my story now, is to encourage people to welcome DEI and the benefits that it brings.
Yeah. Now your story, it has helped a lot of people, right? Would you agree?
I hope
You hope
so.
so. Yeah, I think it has. Um, what do you think? What do you think? I guess the question I'm going to ask is: do you think your story would have been as impactful had you written it right away?
No, probably not. And I might add that when I was first injured, there weren't very many role models that I could look to for help or inspiration or motivation. Again, this was well before Christopher Reeve was injured. And in fact, you didn't see many people who used wheelchairs out in public places back then. I mean, you must keep in mind, this was about 20 years before the Americans with Disabilities Act took effect, and very few places were wheelchair accessible. So you didn't see a lot of people in wheelchairs or with other disabilities out in public back then. And in fact, when I went back to Cornell, there was not one ramp or curb cut on the entire campus. So on my first day of classes, I had to be either pulled up or bounced down close to 100 steps
Wow.
just to attend my first day. So, one of the reasons why I think my story would not have had the same impact back then is people just didn't know what to make about somebody with a disability. We were, I guess, considered so foreign from everybody's daily experience. I don't think it would have had the same impact back.
Yeah. Did you ever get, and you probably did, but did people kind of, you said you treated as like foreign, people with disabilities were kind of foreign. Did you ever get bad treatment?
No, I never got bad treatment, but a lot of people just didn't know, how to approach me or talk with me or treat me like anybody else. In fact, when I first went back to Cornell, I was approached by a student on campus who, when he asked if I was Ken Kunken, and I responded that I was, he said, "Aren't you supposed to be in the hospital?" Now, my reaction was, no, I'm not supposed to be in the hospital. I'm supposed to be right where I was, back in school with the rest of my classmates. But that was the attitude back then. They just assumed if you had a severe disability, you wouldn't be out in public. You wouldn't be back at a college or university or in the workplace. And it took quite a while for those attitudes to start to change.
Yeah. And over time, did you see an improvement in those attitudes?
Quite a bit. Quite a bit. I mean, now it's not uncommon to see people with severe disabilities in the workplace, although there's still a way to go. I mean, there's still a certain amount of prejudice and reluctance to hire people with disabilities, but it's improved quite a bit. It's improved quite a bit. And now with technology, with computers and technology, that more people with disabilities can function very, very well and proficiently in the workplace. I think it's improved quite a bit. But people's attitudes have changed and improved quite a bit just because they've come in more contact with somebody with a disability.
Speaking of technology, has your level of comfort with your condition changed over time because of the technological advances?
Absolutely, because now I have a wheelchair that I can not only operate on my own, an electric wheelchair, but it actually has a Bluetooth device on it that I could operate, with my left arm. It's got like a toggle switch that I could actually operate my computer myself with this Bluetooth device. And as a result, it's opened an enormous uh, type of education, and other settings that I could view on a daily basis and keep up with not only what's going on in the world, but, on myself, do the initiative to contact people, whether it be to, write or respond to emails or just go out in public, knowing that more facilities are accessible to me. It's made an enormous difference.
Yeah, probably very different from the 70s and 80s, huh?
Very. And I might add that my boys are very in tune to this. Even when they were younger, they used to go out and play with friends and come back and say, "Me, Dad, you could go there. We looked, there's a ramp." And they would notice that when they were 6, 7, 8 years old, when most kids would never even think of looking for them.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, and I'm going to rewind back to your story a little bit. And I know you said you went to school for industrial engineering, um, and along the way you went back to school for law school. What made you decide to become an attorney?
Well, I would say there were two different things. One, my older brother Steve was an attorney. He was practicing criminal law at the time. And I used to watch him in court and say, that looked fascinating. And fortunately, I could still talk. I mean, as physically disabled as I am, it fortunately didn't affect my speaking ability and my intellectual ability. But also, when I was working at the Viscardi Center, when I was given many talks on affirmative action and non discrimination, I would encourage people to speak to lawyers about any concerns they had. And I started to think there's no reason why I couldn't become that lawyer. So It was a combination of those things. And in addition, my work experience gave me the added self confidence to convince myself, you know what? I could not only go through law school, but I could work as an attorney.
But what made you decide to go the DA route instead of like defense route?
Well, through my brother's suggestion, I did an internship at the district attorney's office after my second year of law school. And I absolutely loved the experience. But not only did I love it, physically, it made a lot of sense because my office in the district attorney's office was in the same building as the courts. So all I needed to do was take an elevator from my office down to the courtroom and I'd be in court. And in addition, working for the district attorney's office, we had paralegals, we had secretaries, we had legal interns, student interns that were great help, as well as, police officers and investigators that were helping as well. So physically, it made a big difference for me.
Yeah. Was there anything you learned from that experience that really uh, piggybacked on your message from your personal experience in your story?
Yeah, one of the things would be that despite the fact that I was so physically limited, I could still command respect from everyone, whether it be judges, whether it be police detectives, whether it be entrepreneurs and business owners. The fact that I was in a wheelchair and physically limited didn't affect the fact that here I was, a very respected member of the legal profession that basically commanded respect wherever I went. In fact, I might add that I was promoted a number of times in the district attorney's office, and I eventually became one of our deputy bureau chiefs, where I was in a position where I was helping supervise more than 25 other assistant district attorneys.
Yeah. And in all this experience, work and personal experience, what were some of the toughest decisions you had to make?
Well, some of the toughest decisions were obviously to make sure that we're actually prosecuting the right person and whether this person merited a certain plea offer based on what that person did and the reasons why that person did it, and to make sure I lived by the motto that the district attorney is most concerned about doing justice, not just getting convictions, but doing justice and seeing that the right thing happens on every single case. And I worked very hard to make sure I was doing that.
Yeah. How did you, and I guess your story kind of plays into this too, but how did you kind of look at the standards of others? Like, what were your expectations?
Well, I knew that we all face challenges in our life. I mean, for some, the challenges are bigger than others, but to everybody going through it, they're very real challenges. And I knew I had to recognize that while my challenges may seem greater than others, for the other people, they're very real to them as well. And I wanted to make sure that I always recognized that and that I did my best to help give them and provide them the assistance or help that they would need in order to function better in their own position, whether it be in a job or in school or in a family situation. And I've tried my best to do that.
Yeah. And you keep your expectations pretty high. Huh?
I sure do. And as a result, my boys have high expectations for themselves. And I'm so proud to see not only how well they're doing, but how they're influencing other people. In fact, all my boys are now into the martial arts. All three of them are second degree black belts in the martial art Taekwondo. And they've even worked as instructors in Taekwondo.
Wow. Remind me to not mess with them.
Right. I might add too, Greg, that while I've received a lot of nice recognition as a result of some of the things I did, one of the awards that I'm most proud of is that the Nassau County District Attorney's Office started an award given annually. It started 2 years ago that they named the Kenneth J. Kunken Award. And the award is given annually to the outstanding assistant district attorney who demonstrates each year that they show the work ethic and loyalty to the office and the respect of their colleagues, um, as the office felt I have demonstrated. And I'm so proud of that honor, that award, and that recognition.
Wow. That is truly amazing. Just to be able to have something that, not just your book and everything, but have something that is so recognizable that it's going to be passed on. People are going to talk about that for a long time.
Very proud to be named for, to have that award named for me.
Yeah. Now, what do you think led to your insane amount of work ethic?
Well, I had so many members of my family helping me, encouraging me, pushing me to do the best I could do with my life. It got to the point that I basically felt I'd be letting them down
Yeah.
if I didn't do everything I could do with my life, to show them not just that I appreciated it, but that I learned from it and was now to try and help others do more with their lives. And that made an enormous difference. And now, of course, to set the example for my children.
Yeah. Of course. Now, here's a question that is hypothetical, which you have worked in the law field for so long. You probably know to not answer hypothetical questions. But if you don't want to answer, it's totally okay. It's totally
Okay.
hypothetical. Have you ever had what if moments?
Well, by what if, sure. I mean, if personally, very much so. I thought, what if I didn't make that tackle on that day? What would my life have been like?
Yeah.
What if I never met the wonderful woman that has become my wife? That we just celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary. What
Congratulations.
if I decided not to have children? How different my life would have been. What if I never went to law school and decided to just continue as either a counselor or work as an engineer? I mean, I think about that many, many times over the course of my life. And I might say, Greg, that I'm not sure I always made the right decision, but I did my best once I made a decision to make it into the right decision. And I worked hard to do that. And I'm very proud of the way my life has progressed and turned out and the decisions that I've made that have led me to the position I'm in today.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, I have one final question. Okay, there's a theme on this show where I ask people the same question, and I'm very interested to hear your answer. And the question is, what is one thing that you wish you would have known, you wish you would have learned earlier in your life?
Well, the one thing is, while I thought I was a good person throughout my life, I'm sure there are a lot more things I could have done before my injury to have helped others that I wish I would have taken advantage of and done. There are so many times I think back and think perhaps I could have made more of a difference in people's lives during the first 20 years of my life before, out of necessity, I had to become the recipient of so much help and wasn't able to provide as much help as I would have liked.
Yeah, and that's a really good answer. And you are making that difference now, helping others and trying to leave a legacy behind.
Thank you.
I mean, you are. You got a reward named after you. That's one of the biggest things you can do, I think. Pretty cool, Ken. Pretty cool. Do you have anything else you want to tell the audience?
Well, basically, it's as I said earlier, never give up, you know, never quit. There's the expression, it's always darkest before the dawn. There's an awful lot people can do in their lives. Sometimes you may need to sleep on it for a night or two before you realize there's so many good people out there that are ready, willing, and able to help you do more with your life. And that the best reward is when you start paying that back and are in a position where you could help others.
Amazing. That's that was even better than your previous answer.
I'm learning every time, Greg,
There you go. There you
as we
go.
go along.
There we go. Now, for everybody listening, I listened to Ken's book. I think more and more people should listen to his story. Should hear, like I said, we probably can't cover your whole story in one show, Ken, but more and more people can check out your book and everything. And I'm going to put everything about Ken in the show notes for everybody listening. So Ken, people will be able to check you out in the show notes. With that, I mean, we have covered so much, and you have shared a lot of wisdom. I really appreciate your time here today, Ken. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my story with your listeners.
Of course, of course. And for everybody listening, always remember, keep smiling, keep striving, and I will catch you guys in the next episode.